Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Tai, a space where we'll talk about anything and everything surrounding the people that grind through your month-end accounting close.
Hi everyone. Today's episode is Importance of Culture for Global Accounting Teams. Our guest today is Gene Liu, Chief Accounting Officer at Atlassian. On this episode, we talk about the importance of culture on accounting teams, the role values play in culture formation, and tips on how you can build a strong culture in an evolving work climate. Now, I'll hand it over to our host, Gapify CEO Jotham Tai.
Hey, Gene, how's it going? Thanks for joining us on today's podcast.
Awesome to be here, Jotham. Big fan of the work that you and the Gapify team, so just look forward to a great conversation.
Well, I am a big fan on that note of the culture that you guys have established at Atlassian. And for today's topic, wanted to talk about building a strong culture and how important that is for the accounting teams that we've all been here. And for Atlassian specifically, to me, that was just like one of the best examples that I've seen in my career. So I naturally thought about inviting you for this episode.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to jump straight in, right? So let's see things up and set the stage. But, we all know that culture is important for any organization, regardless of function. Like in your own words, Gene, like how would you describe its value and importance specifically for an accounting team? So maybe some unique angles, or maybe it's more or less the same, but I'd love to hear your perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, building a strong organization through culture is something that's personally really important to me. I just say that, the overarching goal is for our team to thrive, to just fundamentally enjoy working with each other. And the culture that we build is a big part of that. And how I've seen those benefits play out, specifically to accounting, is first with shared mindset and priorities. We always say on our team that we're custodians of Atlassian's finances and scaling up a fast-paced, growing company. It's an important responsibility that we take seriously, and everyone on our team plays a big part in that. So that shared mindset of making decisions thoughtfully, with integrity, just being accountable to each other, that's what we emphasize in our culture. And I think that's important, especially in accounting, to have that shared view. I'd also say that fundamentally, having a strong culture leads to a cohesive team and an engaged team. So folks with that shared vision and who like working with each other, it's a team that'll stay together. And to me, that's a differentiator. We're just not any company that you can work for. I want folks to come and just do the best work of their lives with us. To be excited to work here and attracting an engaged and amazing team. That's something that I'm incredibly grateful for.
Yeah.
And I think that's really shown in our team's continuity over the years. Just looking back over maybe just like 6 years, we've had like over 90% retention on our team, and all the credit just goes to culture carriers and leaders in our team for just driving this forward.
Well, I have experienced it firsthand, Gene. So like for our audience, like I have been lucky enough to be part of this organization before Gapify. And Gene, just to kind of summarize in a mathematical way, like how I've translated what you just shared there. So you talked about the importance of a shared vision, how that could lead to, better collaboration and obviously like synergies within the team. And what I have seen with my own eyes, Gene, during my time there is increased levels of productivity, right? So I remember the times that I was there were, all these special projects that were going on, whether it's adding new subsidiaries, new systems, and because everyone just like really connected well with each other, compared to other environments that I've been in, you can definitely, there's a quantitative way of expressing the increases to productivity. Gosh, I sound so geeky with a great culture like you guys is. And I think, and I'd love for you to hear from you, like how your values play a role in this, right? Because I remember a lot of the values from Atlassian because they're just very easy to remember. But does that play a factor in, promoting the environment that you guys have set?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely a values-driven company. And I try to tie it to our team through just like a level of empowerment that you were talking about. Like, everybody, has a voice, everybody has mandate in making their work lives better. And we try to build a culture that, empowers everybody within our org to make suggestions, to look for ways to just, improve their work lives. And you mentioned company values. My personal favorite is be the change that you seek. If you have an idea that could make us better, or you want to automate something, hey, let's try to make it happen. It's this culture of continual improvement and people who think outside the box and celebrating that mentality. I think that's really helped our org grow and improve over the years too.
Gene, I don't say this because you are the guest on today's show, but I've kind of taken and adopted some of the philosophies that I've learned there at Atlassian. So what stood out for me was, that the values of Atlassian, and be the change that you seek is one of them. Like, everyone knew what it was, and everyone kind of recited it, not in a rehearsed way, but it was just like part of the vocabulary. And when it's set like that, like, that's what I'm trying to build with my own organization, like, where there's just such a common, like, universal understanding of what the values are. And I think that sets a great baseline to do all these amazing things that you guys have done.
Totally, especially if you're growing fast. And I'm sure you've seen this with Gapify, right, Jotham?
Right.
Is you've got a great team right now. A culture, helps to ensure that cohesiveness as more and more people join, as you continue to grow to new locations, and like that. That's just something that helps us kind of weave that thread of common vision, common standards of performance. Especially as we've added people over the years. I think that's a theme that comes out a lot within our industry and tech, especially as I talk to peers about managing fast growth and how finance can help kind of support that growth. I think culture does play a huge part in helping us do that. I mean, as you were saying, like when I joined Atlassian, we just had a handful of folks in accounting. You were a big part of consulting us through that high growth phase at a point. Now we're approaching almost 100 people. Back then we were a couple $100 million in revenue. Now we're over $2 billion. So the orgs certainly changed a lot since then, and we've gone remote first too, and so there's no requirement to come into the office on a day-to-day basis anymore. So how do you ensure, like, newer folks, people who aren't working side by side on a day-to-day basis, feel integrated and feel like they're part of the team? Well, culture is just a big part of that, and helping us ensure that people are onboarded the right way and feel like they're part of a global connected team.
I can't imagine, Gene, and I have seen in my consulting years and audit years too, where the culture isn't there, right? And now that they're moving into like what you guys are doing, like our fully remote setting, I can't imagine how challenging that is for an organization that doesn't have like a strong established culture to be able to take things remotely, because I'm sure it's that much harder now to kind of establish the consistency that you talked about, especially when you're growing at such a rapid rate.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're continuing to iterate on. I mean, this relatively new trend post-pandemic, but that really has helped us stay cohesive. The retention is a big part of that. So cultural carriers over the years want to ensure that they're recognized, they have a voice, and that everybody has a way of shaping our culture as we grow too.
You guys are just, again, I'm going to say this for the 10th time, you guys have set the bar really high, and it's just incredible. I'm incredibly honored just to have been exposed to that in the past. I want to drill down into accountants specifically. So actually, let's do it this way. You're an accounting leader in an organization, and of course, part of building your accounting team, you may be getting folks from either the consulting, Big Four, audit world. And we all know how it was back then, because you and I lived in that world, whereas I think it's gotten a lot better, by the way, since we were there. But I think we came from an age where culture wasn't the first priority, right? So
Sure.
You're bringing in a wave of like ex Big Four folks that may be used to operating in a more stuffy environment. Like, how do you integrate them into your culture? What are some good tips for that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm thinking Big Four has changed a lot. I mean, I think tons of respect, by the way, of the good work that, and the things that you learn in Big Four. But yeah, I mean, I'd say gone are the days when, the whole team is huddled in, a tiny little conference room waiting for, the partner to head home and then the manager to head home and then, figure out what you're going to do next.
The 10-minute rule, right? Do you remember that? And by the way,
we're
for
really
the audience
dating ourselves now, right?
Oh gosh, yeah, I won't mention years for our sake, but just for our audience to know, I'm sure a lot know this in the accounting space, but the 10-minute rule is in audit, you can't leave until 10 minutes after the partner leaves the conference room. And is it the 10-minute rule? Maybe even longer than that, but that was too long ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's something that I've thought about too. And, for our company specifically, like we are also hiring from like the Big Four because we're an accounting software company. So, that's something we're thoughtful about too, right? Like, what we want to avoid, for example, is us bringing in like a public accounting leader or any kind of leader for that matter that came from like a stuffy enterprise organization and then like build a team and a culture that
Sure.
mimics that. And I find, that's something that requires effort to maintain, especially in a remote environment where you don't get to see everyone live like every day. Am I overstating maybe like the criticality of that?
I think we have to adapt. And I think that has changed, over the past few years as well, and definitely for the better. Especially as you mentioned, as more companies move away from that traditional, everybody huddled into the conference room, everybody's going to the office at a set amount of time, really providing, your teams the flexibility is super important. So yeah, as leaders, as you're building out that org, it shouldn't be about, FaceTime, putting in specific hours at the desk. It really is about the results and what you do with the time. So yes, flexibility to balance home and work. But obviously, when you're working up against a deadline or you're delivering an ambitious project, following through on your responsibilities to your team. But I'd say, yeah, the contrast in industry, particularly in tech, is about working smart. I love that, in industry, we take ownership of a process. We roll up our sleeves and get it done, end to end. And that to me is, I'd say, the biggest transition point and differentiator as someone moves from consulting or Big Four. It's something that we always focus on within Atlassian, that pride in continual development and agency in making those changes. I mentioned earlier, be the change that you seek. Well, how did you process this a year ago? Can that scale a year later, 5 years later? What are like pain points and inefficiencies that we take out? Can you automate that accrual? Those are things that, yeah, we always emphasize from someone joining us, for the first year, really bring in those experiences, whether that's Big Four, whether that's consulting, whether it's another company, right? Like, yeah, ownership is what makes the transition to industry way more rewarding for me from a career perspective, I'd say.
Yeah. And how I'm like converting that into like specific like steps or responsibilities within the month end close, for example. Ownership is a word that you use. And if you own, that responsibility during the month end close, you're empowering that person to own it, therefore empowering that person to do it whenever they can because they own it, and not necessarily say, hey, Miss Senior Accountant, it's 4 p.m. on day one. Is it like there yet? You give, I mean, obviously there's still like deadlines that you have to work towards to manage the overall close, but it's not as prescriptive as it was in the past, and having a good culture where you're promoting ownership and accountability. I think that creates the type of synergies that I think this overall tech culture, really requires it to be successful.
Totally.
Well, so, want to wrap up with just, a couple other, if you have other like tips, like, and, they can be very tactical, like, how do you maybe like weekends on a close or holidays during close? Like, what are some tips like that are very accounting specific that you think others can take away and, learn from?
Yeah, I'd say, culture is something you need to focus on. It's something that you cultivate. It's not something that magically happens. We try to be purposeful about it, and reinforce our culture, from small everyday rituals to just more planned out programs. From an everyday perspective, just celebrating people. I think anniversaries, promotions, just taking the time to thank people for the contributions they've made, whether that's 1 year in, 2 years in, 10 years in, what they've done and how they've gone about doing it. On promotions, like why they're getting those enhanced responsibilities. Just emphasizing the how is really important for us. In my team-wide all hands, you mentioned values. I mean, I always set time aside to feature one of our company values. We highlight how folks demonstrated those values in a meaningful way, and really celebrate that as a team and spend the time to talk about it. So these are just kind of everyday things that we do to reinforce our culture. We also kind of build out more formal programs as well, to closely tie culture to recognition and our everyday activities. I'd say an example is a peer recognition program, where you can nominate another employee for something special that they did. So it could be a simple thank you note to a larger monetary award. Every nomination needs to be tied to a specific company value, just to further reinforce that.
I'm forgetting like what that is. Like at Gapify, we call them high fives, but I know you guys at Atlassian have like a name for
it's a kudos.
A kudos, that's right. How could I forget that?
Yeah.
Well, and I think what I heard too, and one of my also takeaways here is that there's time required to cultivate that.
Sure.
It's not like you just, at every quarter think of like some programs to do and find a specific meeting at a specific point in the year. Like it sounds like it's a continuous, like it has to be part of a leader's DNA, right? Is that like a fair way of putting it?
Exactly. Like in, team-wide meetings, every week I have office hours just blocked off on my schedule for people to drop in and talk one-on-one with me from the global team. And like you could talk about anything, open company, no BS is one of our values. And I try to, embody that in my week-to-week activities. And there's, opportunities for people to ask me tough questions, to talk one-on-one with me. And that's, just a way of like living out your values on a regular basis. Spending the time to emphasize that is time very well spent, I'd say.
Absolutely. And time is essential. Like spending time on that is essential, especially when you're leading a large organization. It's just fascinating to me when you first start your career, it's like more about the numbers, but over time, and as you become leaders, it's
sure.
Numbers are important, but also you have to be a good steward of your organization and foster this team environment to be successful and to be able to execute for your organization. So Gene, like this conversation was super helpful. Maybe next time we get you back on the show and we can drill down into more technical accounting concepts, but I thought this was a very important topic, especially given today's environment. So thanks for joining us on today's show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jotham.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.